Welcome, everybody, to the Fargo Planning Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 5th. The hour is 3 o'clock. We'll get started with our agenda. We'll just go through here quick. There have been a couple changes. Item 1, NSC additions, continue to March 5th, as you see. Items 2A and 2B, Rocking Horse Farm 6th edition, have been withdrawn. Item 3A and B, Timber Creek 9th edition, has been continued to March 5th. Item 4, Timber Creek 10th edition, is withdrawn. Items 5A and B, we will hear. Item 6, we will hear. 7, Prairie Farms 2nd edition, has been continued to March 5th. Items 8 and 9, we will hear. I would like to move under other items, E1, I would like to move that up to here after item 9. And then we will hear 10A and B. And then we will hear E2. Any questions on that or any other additions or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the order of agenda.
So moved.
So moved. In a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item B is the minutes from our last meeting, January 3rd, 2019. They were in your packet. Any discussion, questions, corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So moved. And a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item C is the brown bag luncheon. We will have that on Wednesday, February 20th, same time, 11:30 to 1. Location to be determined at this point, as we will be very likely in the new facility, but information on that will be forthcoming. With that, we will move into the public hearing items. Starting, here we go, items 5A and B, Eagle Valley 3rd edition. Donald will walk us through this one.
Ma'am, I'll just wait a moment till Commissioner Morgan is seated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Don.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress of the Department of Planning and Development. Item 5A and B is the Eagle Valley 3rd edition. This is located on 73rd Avenue South and 25th Street South, just south of Davies High School, which is what this is here, Davies High School. 25th Street here, 73rd Avenue here, 74th. This is a property is currently zoned MR2, so this is a plat and a zone change. Zone change is a little different than we usually have. This is actually going to go to a more restrictive zoning on most of the lots. This plat is proposed, the shading shows the flood information there. But the plat shows that there are 2 blocks here of mostly single-family residential lots. The proposed zoning is SR4 for all of these. This lot here, this lot 9, block 1, will remain MR2. So there'll be some multi-dwelling housing on there. I believe a maximum of 15 units is possible on there, considering the lot size and the available density of MR2. I don't know if Mr. Eunice might have some more information on that later in our presentation here. Again, pretty straightforward here. There's an additional new public street here called Eagle Valley Drive South. This will be a dedicated standard width public street. The lots here will all take access off that street, and then these lots here will take access off 23rd. None of the lots will be able to take access off of 73rd or off of 25th Street South. And again, there will be an amenities plan, which the developer is working on with staff, that will have the requirement in there that the property owners on 73rd and 25th are required to do some of the maintenance on those double fronting lots on the sidewalk that would be on their back side. They'll take access from the front. It's a double fronting lot. So they have certain responsibility for snow removal and boulevard mowing on those lots, and that'll be something that'll be, they'll be advised of prior to going forward with this. And again, pretty straightforward. Normally, this is a low-density residential development here, low to medium-density residential, and these lots all fit in that. And again, a pretty straightforward plat here. The applicant, John Eunice, is with us this afternoon. May wish to address the commission or provide a little more information there if you have questions for him. Back out here. And the staff's recommendation is stated on the screen and shown in your staff report. That concludes staff's presentation, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Commissioners, any questions for Donald at this time? John?
Donald, back to that double fronting lot.
Yes, sir.
Refresh my memory. Do we have a given policy in place from the planning? So is it typically the homeowner's responsibility? Because I know it.
Yes, sir, that's what I was referring to. It'll appear in the amenities plan here. If I may just take let me quote it from the staff report. Ben Dow gives me the wording on this here. So the owners of the lots that have frontage on 73rd Avenue, which is this one here, will be responsible for snow removal on the public sidewalk and mowing of the boulevard along 73rd. The city is responsible for snow removal along 25th Street South and Arterial Street, but the property owners are required to mow the boulevard. So that'll appear in the amenities plan.
Okay.
And that's the same that's been used on Bison Meadows and some other recent plats that have those double fronting lots. And again, we work with Public Works to develop that wording.
Commissioners, any other questions for Donald? Seeing none, we'll invite the applicant up. John, do you have anything to add?
Do you guys have any questions?
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for John? Okay. Seeing none, yep.
Actually, could I just ask one of these? I believe these are intended to be detached homes, Mr. Eunice?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Let's open it up for the public hearing. Are there any members of the audience that wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or discussion?
Madam Chairman, I'll offer the motion as included in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye. The motion has carried. Thank you, Donald. On to item 6, Shots 4th edition. Again with John Eunice, and Kylie will walk us through this one.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item number 6 is titled Shots 4th edition. The applicant, John Eunice, is requesting a zone change to repeal and reestablish a conditional overlay on lots 1 through 4, Block 1, Shots 4th edition. The proposed conditional overlay maintains all of the original requirements while seeking to extend the use of portable signs from June 30th, 2018 to June 30th, 2021, or until the development is complete and has been issued certificates of occupancy for the completed development, whichever comes first. Staff has not received any inquiries regarding this application. Based on the zone change criteria of the LDC, staff is recommending approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kylie. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll hear from the applicant. Do you have anything to add? Okay, is there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing. Are there any members of the audience that wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or discussion? Are you ready to act?
Move to approve as indicated in our staff packet.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion has carried. 7 has been continued. Item 8, Liberty Square Edition. Aaron?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Item 8, titled Liberty Square Edition, is a request for a conditional use permit to allow manufacturing and production in the GC General Commercial Zoning District. The subject property is located at 2121 43rd Street South in Fargo, which is the site of the, just for reference, the old Gander Mountain retail business, just on the south side of I-20, or I-94, excuse me, just east of 45th Street South. The specific intent of the request is to allow the applicant to repurpose the vacant retail store for manufacturing and production, specifically for CI Sport, which is a producer of embroidered and print apparel. As outlined in the staff report, staff finds that the proposed CUP is consistent with the applicable review criteria, and staff would note that for manufacturing and production within the general commercial zoning district, there are a few additional use-specific standards that are outlined in the staff report there. In addition to those standards, which are primarily intended to address things like screening and proximity to residential uses, staff also does recommend additional conditions of approval, which are pretty typical. This is language used in previously similar requests over the past few years. Again, the intent here is just to limit the extent of any other types of manufacturing production businesses that may or may not go in there in the future. Additionally, condition number 5 would essentially sunset the conditional use permit if the use were to cease for more than 12 months. With that, again, staff finds that the review criteria have been satisfied, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Commissioners, any questions for Aaron? Okay. Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak on behalf of? Okay. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public comment. Are there any members of the audience that wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or discussion? We're ready to act.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the staff recommendations.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, the motion has carried. Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yep.
Oh, I just wanted to congratulate you on your project. It's nice to see a building like that being used again rather than standing vacant. And I'm really excited to hear what you're going to do with your space on Broadway.
Thank you. Item number 9, the basins at 39th edition. Donald?
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Again, another pretty straightforward plat here. This is the basins at 39th. This is way down, as we say, on 100th Avenue South and I-29 here. This is in the Commerce on I-29 subdivision, which was approved some years ago, largely for industrial-type uses. You may recall this applicant, Mr. Riley, had a similar replat of one of these larger lots last March, just about a year ago exactly, actually right here, and he has since acquired another lot that he wants to divide in a somewhat different way. the zoning on this is LI here, limited industrial. The plat looks like this. It's 4 lots, so here's 39th Avenue over here. That's this street here, this one. And it's sort of platted the long way. It's a long, narrow lot, and it's tough to plat more than a couple of lots out of this. So this has a design we don't see very often. We call these flag lots, lots 3 and 4 here, because they look like a flag. This little strip here would be the pole, and this part is the flag. It's a way to get lots that are far from a public right-of-way to actually have a right-of-way touch. We don't recommend it as a style of development, but it is a sort of a problem solver type lot configuration. And so we worked at our pre-development development review, we worked with the applicant and his engineer to create this here. So all the lots actually do touch the public right-of-way. They have right-of-way touch. These strips are 25 feet wide here, each one. And then laid over that is a 50-foot wide easement and a cul-de-sac turnaround, just to, make sure the access is clear and that you can, there'll be a road down the middle of that. And then the turnaround is for fire turnaround there as pursuant to our statutory code requirement for width, and that's been reviewed by the fire department as well. Staff has received no protests on this project down here. I'll just make one more note on right-of-way, which I learned as part of this process. This part of the project is up against the frontage road here for I-29, but from our perspective, that is not considered public right-of-way the same as a public street is, so they won't take any access off that side. That's more controlled by the DOT than the city, so they won't be taking any access off that side. And there's a negative access easement here on the existing plat to indicate that. So that's why they all have to take the touch off, the right-of-way touch off here. The applicant, Jesse Riley, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. Otherwise, staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Commissioners, any questions for Donald? Yep, John?
Donald, lots 1 and 2,
Yes, sir.
can they have access off that right-of-way, that 50-foot, or do they?
I believe they could, or they could take it straight off the street.
Okay.
And then along that same line, the applicant is working with engineering. I believe the engineers, Representative Mr. Iverson, submitted yesterday a plan for review for expanding the utilities, because obviously each lot would have to have a direct connection to the public street, and so they'll be adding some more connections and routing them. So engineering is reviewing that plan from the engineer.
Okay.
Any other questions for Donald? Okay, if not, you said the applicant is here? Okay. Any questions, or do the applicant want to speak on this? Good. Okay, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing. Are there any members of the audience that wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion or questions? Are we ready to act?
Madam Chairman, I'll offer the motion as included in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Take a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, the motion is approved. Thank you. We will hear item E1 now. Donald?
So commissioners, item E1 and items 10A and B are all a continuous project, but we hear them in 2 parts for a reason that's nearly 50 years old. You may recall about a year ago, Mr. Nelson on our staff here had a similar project that deals with this area north 19th Avenue and east of University Drive, called the Airport First Edition, and this was platted back in 1969. And there were some rather restrictive covenants on that at the time, mainly trying to keep it as an industrial area and prohibiting, among other things, any sort of residential use on that area. I'm going to go to these lots in here. These lots are residential lots here along 10th Street, but these are the lots in the Airport First Edition. And there was another applicant who wanted to make a modification of those covenants. And in the covenants, which date from 1969, there is the requirement that your commission approve the change in the covenants after the applicant has acquired signatures from the property owners, and we'll go into that in a minute here. So this is the similar, it's a different project, there's a different goal in this project, but it's the same situation with these covenants. This is a very rare situation where the city is actually party to the covenants, and that was set up, again, when this was platted in 1969. So that's the background on that. This particular property here, the zoning here is all limited industrial, except this area here, which is limited commercial. This is where the rather large student housing project is, along University Drive here. And as you see there, and there's the convenience store and the Pizza Hut, just for a location. Our project that we're concerned with here is this corner here, 21st Avenue, 12th Street North. Used to be a laundromat and car wash called Busy Bubbles. In accordance with the requirements of the covenants, the applicant has to gather a majority of, 51% of, signatures of property owners in the airport first edition, which includes these 40 lots, and also of these blocks of Peter's Sway fifth edition, which are all residential lots. There are 36 owners there. We've been working with the applicant to do this. He provided a rather easy to understand sheet. That's the sheet in the last part of your packet there that he sent or gave to all the property owners, explaining what he wanted to do. And his goal here is to eliminate the covenant that prohibits any residential use in this subdivision, so he can develop the property, as he's going to see in items 10A and 10B, a rezone and actually add some residential use over the existing commercial use to make a mixed-use property. Again, this was zoned back when things were different near the airport. Planning staff did talk to the airport director and asked him, if he had any particular opinion on this, and he said, well, as long as they follow the procedure in modifying the covenants, that there would be no objection from the airport. So what you're reviewing today, and this is a non-hearing item, but you're still voting on it, what you're reviewing or going to be voting on today is that the proposed variance to the restrictive covenant, which would eliminate the requirement, or eliminate the prohibition on residential uses in the airport first edition, be overturned, that there will be no more, that prohibition would not be there anymore. Staff did analyze the signatures, and they did receive a majority of signatures for both groups. When this staff report went out, they were still 3 short for the airport first edition. A couple of days after this went out, the applicant did provide the 3 additional signatures, and staff verified that those matched the mailing list. We provided the mailing list and the property list for them, so we knew when they could be matching it up. So they did achieve those, which is the minimum requirement of the covenants, and so staff can be confident they're going forward that they've met the requirements of that.
Okay.
So staff's recommendation is stated on the staff report and shown on the screen, and the applicant is here. I believe the property owner, as well as the applicant, Richard Meyer from YHR Partners, is here this afternoon, and they're going to have a presentation too when we get to the next part.
Okay.
So there's no hearing, I guess.
Correct. Do we still hear from the applicant if there's no hearing? Possibly? Perfect. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Donald at this time?
Can't let them off too easy.
John?
So we're actually taking allowing this for that whole area now by doing this.
Yes, sir. If they take the covenant off, it's my understanding they take it off for the whole area.
Okay, so anybody else could do,
Is that, or is it just for this lot? Which is, I'm sorry, it is just for the lot. Sorry.
so this is just for this piece of property? Okay, so anybody else wanting,
Would have to go, yes. I'm sorry, I misspoke, yeah. Sure, it is just for the lot there, because it does specify. Yeah, okay.
okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to
Sorry
clarify
about that.
Just a question. I've been on the commission for a long time, and this is the only area that we've seen this in. Are there more areas further north of here, or maybe to the east of here, that have these same covenants that you know of?
No, this is extremely unique for
Okay.
this specific part of town
Okay.
because of the airport.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment. I think at the time that that covenant was put in place, the airport was actually closer to this property, that it was the old airport, and the runway came in right over there by University, just west of University. Since then, the airport has been moved, and so it really, the conditions that would have affected it at the time of the covenant don't exist any longer.
Yes, ma'am, and they also, the Air Guard was equipped with a different kind of aircraft then. They had high-performance jet fighters then, which also might have been there's noise and other things associated with that. So that might have been, as you say, ma'am, other condition that is not there anymore.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Donald? Or the applicant at this time? Any discussion? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept staff recommendations.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Foltz,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
McGilkey,
Aye.
Bachmeyer,
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye, motion's carried. Moving on to item 10A and B.
Okay.
Donald?
Rich, do you
Continuing on, I
wanna
guess.
Bring your boards and just set them up here. A brief interlude here while we reset. I'll start talking slowly here. Now, having cleared that hurdle, we are now on the airport first edition here. So again, the same property. And what is proposed here is to rezone this property to LC Limited Commercial, and then request a CUP, a conditional use permit, to allow residential use on that. So again, the same property. That's the same situation that this property over here is in that provides student housing. That is also zoned LC Limited Commercial. And then what the applicant proposes to do is, there's the site, there's the existing building. They want to add 2 stories to it. And so this would be the floor plan. The first floor is obviously still the commercial with some office. It's really more of a warehouse use at this time. And then the next 2 drawings show the layout of the floor plan of the proposed building there. And there is a rendering of the finished building here. And so this is the proposal here. There are some conditions on the CUP that are noted in your staff report and in the recommendation and in the CUP that you'll be available for signing. Again, we use these as pretty standard conditions when we have residential in the limited commercial or commercial zone or general commercial zone. Maximum residential density is that of the MR3 zone, which is 24 units an acre. This is below that, so it complies with that condition. A minimum of 30% of the lot shall remain as open space. That's something that will be dealt with at the building permit stage. But again, similar to the MR3, there's a requirement for open space in there. And then to provide some bicycle parking facilities such as racks or lockers on site, since the applicant has said that this is just, for a general audience, you might say, but it is, of course, close to NDSU and NDSCS. And so students of those institutions might find this an attractive option as a place to live, and so have some bike options there. And then all other development standards would be met at the building permit, time of building permit evaluations, such as parking and landscaping. And there is no residential next to it, so there's no buffering involved here. So staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen, and then I believe Mr. Rich Meyer of YHR has a presentation to go along with this when you're ready, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Donald. Commissioners, any questions for Donald at this time? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll make this brief. What we're proposing, again, over the old busy bubbles, is the building right now is a little bit run down, to say the least. There is a tenant on the main floor down home. They are actually part of the development group that owns the building, so they're a tenant and an owner. We're proposing a couple floors of some apartments, four apartment units on each floor, so fairly low density, and we're right across the street from a fairly large, obviously, apartment complex, so we think we're going to fit in with the neighborhood real well. We're going to take the building, and it's going to vastly upgrade the look and the value of it and the use. So if you have any questions, please ask.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Yes.
Are these apartments?
They are apartments.
Okay, and so what are you anticipating the rents will be?
I'm sorry.
What will the rents be approximately? Mhm.
So do you want to just come up so we can have it heard and recorded, please?
Right now, the plan is to have a one-bedroom on each floor, two two-bedrooms, and one three-bedroom. So the one-bedrooms, they're going to be market price. There's going to be a handicap unit on the first, or it'd be at the second floor, and there will be a handicap accessible elevator on that floor to get to that unit. That'll be the one-bedroom or the two-bedroom. That hasn't really been decided yet. And then we have, it'll be market rents price, $700 for a one-bedroom, $850 to $950 to two bedrooms. It all depends on market rates at that time. And the three bedrooms, $1,100 to $1,200. The heat will be paid on them. They'll pay electric. So it's market rates.
Just another question. Are you concerned at all about the amount of building that's been done up in that area, specifically around NDSU, competing for the students?
Not really. I know a lot of people that don't like to live in 90-unit complexes. And we've done other projects on Dakota Drive as well as the corner of it'd be 19th Street and 11th Avenue North. We tore down a duplex and we put some of those townhomes up, but we did a lot bigger townhomes with double-sized garages, floor drains, heated garages. We kind of upscaled them from the ones that were really crammed in there, the ones that they're parallel from the street side to the alley side. We didn't do those. They're about 1,400 square feet instead of 1,100 square feet for a two-bedroom or three-bedroom. And we did all three-bedroom, three baths, floor drains, 3 air conditioners instead of 1 and 2 in some of those other units. And we did on Dakota Drive, we tore an old 3-plex down and did a 5-unit townhome. And they're anywhere from 1,400 to 1,500 square feet instead of the small. We're trying to do stuff a little bit different to get a different niche than the rest of the people that are up there. So.
Yeah, I think this is a refreshing change from the high density that's been so popular among developers, supposedly for the bottom line.
I personally would rather live in a smaller building. That's instead of all that.
Mhm.
So.
And the other thing is that it's not just students up there. If you look at the vast number of faculty and administrators and all the rest, there are a lot of people there that don't fit into the student category, but many of them say they can't find housing up on the north side. So it seems like this development would fit their needs.
Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I've got one question. In regards to the parking, you've got 20 parking spots on the west side of the building and 8 on the east. Which area is going to be designated for the apartment parking?
The apartment, we're required to have 18 spaces for the apartments. So we've got 20 on the west side, and then we've got the 8 on the east side. And actually, we're required to only have 2 on that side. So we're required to have around 20 spots, and we've got 28. So we've got plenty of parking.
Are certain spots going to be designated for the apartment parking then?
Right now, we anticipate everything on the west.
Okay.
Because the front door of the retail space is actually on the east side.
Okay.
So the front door for the apartments will be on the west, and the front door for the retail will be on the east, so there's going to be a nice designation, separation there.
Okay. And I would assume you'll have some visitor parking so that they don't end up out
Absolutely.
on the street?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And actually, the 18 includes the visitor parking that's actually in the code.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners?
I was just going to ask about the retail space. Do you have, you mentioned that the current property owners and partners are down home. Are they going to remain in that space, or are you looking at other?
Yeah, they anticipate remaining there for quite some time. I think they just opened up the space about a year ago, so they'll be there a while.
Okay.
How long ago was the building sold from the Busy Bubbles owner?
We bought it in March of last year and re-gutted ripped everything out and remodeled the one side into offices, a conference room, and then on the west side was the old laundromat. That's all basically open right now because we're basically waiting to finish it off inside. It's all warehouse. It's all just stored furniture for down home because we'll have to run pipes and stuff. We're just waiting to finish that. It's all storage right now.
So, but this is a completely new building? No?
No.
No.
I think it was built in '82, and we had a structural engineer that looked at it, that it's all brick and masonry, so it can support the 2 stories up of wood frame.
I see.
And our intentions at first when we bought it wasn't to do this, and then it just kind of keep growing.
Commissioners, other questions? Okay, thank you. This time we'll open it up for, Donald, did you have anything else to add?
If I
Yeah?
could just recap a couple
Yes.
of quick things. Going back to the parking, I believe was part of the discussion here that the applicant is figuring that the current use classifies as warehouse, and if that use maintains, they would have, less than the full retail parking. But when we get to the building permit, we'll work on that to see if there's going to be any change in that space, and would have to, provide us enough parking, which they seem to have room to do. And again, just to recap the recommendation for you. So in the previous action, you've handled the covenants. Here, there's the zone change and the CUP. The CUP stops with your commission, just kind of hangs there for a little bit. The zone change will go to the city commission in the next few weeks for their first and second readings. So,
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll open it up for public discussion. Are there any members of the audience that wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions, any discussion? Are we ready to act?
Madam Chair, I'll offer the motion as included in the staff report.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
McGilkey,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Bachmeyer,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, Donald.
thank you, ma'am.
With that, closes the public hearing portion. We just have one more item to hear. Aaron? Nope. Mark? Maybe? Somebody will walk us through the work plan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm excited to state that we've made progress on Land Development Code and the Core Neighborhood Plan concept and idea. For over 16 years, it seems like it's been easy to beat up the Land Development Code, how it's out of date, how it doesn't function, how it doesn't provide this, doesn't provide that. The Planning Department over the last year has put their heads together and tried figuring out what should we do and how should we go about doing it. And today I just want to give you a little overview of where we're at and where we would like to go with the idea that you will be included in this process intimately throughout the entire time. One of the struggles we always had with the Land Development Code was how do we go about structuring the maybe analysis of it and funding it. And with that, we put our heads together, and when you start looking at large projects like this and possibly hiring consultants, you start looking at a pretty good amount of money. And as we started talking a little bit more amongst ourselves, we figured, these projects usually aren't a year long, they're 2 years, they're 3-year long projects. So we thought, well, maybe if we utilize our planning service account, which is an account that is used to hire consultants, added for an increase in that, and put together like a 10-year plan of what we wanted to do with all our plans and how we wanted to update them and how we wanted to reconstruct them. Maybe a concept would shake out that would maybe accommodate some sort of analysis of a land development code. So long story short, we pitched that idea at the last year for the 2019 budget, and we were awarded almost twice the amount of money that we had in our planning services account, along with a 10-year plan identifying the different plans. These include the growth plan, the Go 2030 plan, the Downtown in Focus plan. A lot of those documents get out of date real quick, and it's really good to revisit them every 5 years. And if you don't revisit them every 5 years, more than likely it's almost a complete reconstruction when you do revisit them. So what came to the surface was the land development code and the core neighborhood plan. And the staff, starting in November, the staff started having these Friday meetings. And at first they were scheduled about an hour and a half, and we thought that'd be way too much time. But it's been kind of fun. We've done some consensus building. We've identified what are our goals and why do we want to do this, and we've sort of come out with an outline, which I'll be able to speak to today. And I anticipate this to be pretty informal. So if I'm talking about something in the meantime and there's some sort of a question, please feel free to stop me, and I should be able to explain sort of some of the thought process behind what we're proposing. And I'll focus on the land development code first. When we started looking at the land development code, there's always an assumption that it's completely out of date and it needs to be gutted and start from scratch. And as we sort of did some nominal group process consensus building within what we each thought as individual staff members on where we should go with it, there got to be some common themes. And one of the themes was, well, maybe the land development code's really not that bad, but how do we know? And we put together a list of cities that were close in population under us and above us, and kind of started poking around with their land development codes and who's been updated recently, who hasn't been updated recently. And we found a huge variety of, some are still have a land development code from the 60s, some are brand new. In addition, coming from me working with this code for my entire career at the city of Fargo, I had always thought it was kind of subpar too, but we've had the opportunity to work with a couple consultants recently, and that are nationwide consultants, and some of their comments was, your code's really not that bad. So we started thinking as a group, well, if we were to hire a consultant and have a consultant do all the work, do we really need a brand new code? And the more we thought about it, the more we thought maybe we'd break this down in a two-phase process where we would work on an RFP, hire a consultant to analyze our code, identify some shortfalls in our code, identify some good things about our code, and then possibly give us maybe 3 recommendations of where we go in the future. And at that point, we would go through the formal process of working with the Planning Commission and City Commission and identifying a process that we really wanted to pursue, and then we would reconstruct a new RFP to hire a new consultant to be able to do the tasks identified in phase 1. Some of the reasoning behind that is we were concerned that a consultant might come in and say, oh yeah, your code is horrible, and then have this huge long project when actually maybe it really isn't that bad. And this would give us an idea to really identify where this code is at and where we want it to go. One thing that I personally see that's exciting about this is doing this phase 1 will give us the confidence to be able to say, yes, this is a good code, or no, this isn't a good code, versus, well, it doesn't accommodate what somebody wants today, so therefore it's not a good code. Up till now, is there any questions on what I'm talking about?
Do you keep a cheat sheet on past cases that, where the land development code comes into play and where we've maybe gone contrary to what it currently states? So that, I mean, you can identify right off the get-go some areas that, let's say over the last 10, okay, refresh my memory, this code, this one was rewritten when?
1998,
98. And was that a complete,
complete brand-new
okay.
code.
So you, over the years, everybody's kind of kept their own, so right off the get-go, you have a little bit of an idea on the areas that need to be, and I take it that information then is made available to the consultant?
Yes. We have an extensive Excel spreadsheet that identifies a lot of the areas that are gray within the code. Recently, we did a pretty large push of a bunch of different text amendments to clean up some of the non-controversial ones that just needed to be cleaning. But also with that, there are some that interpretively could be seen both ways, and this would be a good process to be able to clean those up. But yeah, we do have an extensive list of those.
In your staff process of sort of beginning this analysis, did you designate or identify any sort of models or exemplars of other cities that you looked at that were recently done and you thought that really looked like a good model?
It seems, this is going to be an odd answer here, but you know, when it comes to zoning codes and land development codes, it's all in the eye of the beholder, to be honest. What I identify is going to be an awesome code may not be identified by many people within the community. That being said, we are familiar with many different codes, but I think hiring a third-party consultant through the RFP process would give us the ability to be able to get an uninterested point of view, a third-party point of view, to be able, and to build consensus amongst the community versus the staff kind of dictating, well, I think our code should be like this, or I think our code should be like that. I think the process will include some sort of planning process that's going to build that consensus to be able to identify really what direction do we want to go positively versus it being, to a degree, hijacked by a special interest party that is kind of a squeaky wheel.
Maybe to add to Commissioner Bachmeier's point, I think as a staff, we obviously have a lot of knowledge and experience with the code and have some strong feelings, as Commissioner Gunkelman says. One of the things that excites us about a consultant is, again, getting that peer review, if you will, and also to kind of check in our biases and then make sure that you know, we have the community's interest incorporated. So it's kind of like doing surgery on yourself. You're not going to do that, you know, and so so you want to kind of you know, make sure you get some fresh perspectives.
I've got a question. How definitive is the land development code? For instance, is it a guideline then to which you make reference in making decisions in planning? Or is it something that is enforceable? Or is it something that can be changed with ease? In individual cases. So, you know, if you have the land development code and there's a guideline, and somebody comes to you with something that conflicts in some way with the code, what kind of action is taken?
Here's kind of how it works right now. I'm going to simplify this. So let's say we have a 25-foot setback, and someone says, yeah, I don't want to follow that 25-foot setback. That is a definite, for sure, they have to follow that 25-foot setback as outlined in the land development code. One issue that happens is sometimes some of those interpretations get to be pretty gray based on types of materials that you want to use for architectural aesthetics. However, you know, if a person truly doesn't believe that that 25, it does not say 25 feet, there's a process as far as appealing an administrative decision as outlined in the Land Development Code, or there's like a variance process based on hardships that are identified. And if the individual all around still doesn't agree with that, what we go through right now is a text amendment, and which is a process identified in the code on how to be able to formally go through changing what that interpretation is.
Yeah, I
Does that answer your
understand that.
question?
So how stringent then is it if there are all these ways in which a person can kind of get around or get their way?
Maybe if I can, there's not really a bunch of ways to get around the land development code. It's law, and so it's like speeding. And so, or maybe speeding's not a good example, but yeah, so there's ways to vary the code, and that's what the PUD or the conditional use permit does, is it has parameters in there where you're going to do this instead of this. We have criteria that we have to evaluate, and so that's what a planned unit development is, and a conditional use permit is ways to basically amend a custom ordinance for that particular applicant.
Well, the reason I ask the question is that it seems like many of the cases that we deal with are people asking for these variances.
And they're not really asking for variances, they're asking for a planned unit development or a conditional use permit. So variance is deviating, saying, I don't want to build to 25 feet, I want to build to 10 feet, or I want to build 2 feet, whatever. A planned unit development and a conditional use permit are entirely different tools. And it sounds like probably what I would recommend is maybe so one of the things at our brown bag is we'll bring a more thorough analysis and steps to bring forward to you to see if we're heading in the right direction. And then hopefully at the, what month is today? March, Planning Commission agenda, we would like to bring kind of the recommendation, to get your buy-in and recommendation, yes, we are going to go forward. And then we would go to City Commission to get the permission to do the RFP. So that's kind of our long-range plan. And so, but just real quick, the conditional use permit and the planned unit development are different tools and we have permissions to do that within the ordinance itself. But once that planned unit development gets defined, and so we'll just take a case, or the case you just permitted, the conditional use permit, you just approved a certain ordinance specific to that property, then that becomes the law that we guide and evaluate that project by. So what you're doing with the planned unit development and a conditional use permit is actually varying the law, and then that ordinance gets adopted. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Maybe one I think point that's important to emphasize is within the land development code, clearly people can ask for a change of zoning.
Yeah.
Those are the things that maybe feel like the world's changing, but I mean, that's a conscious part of the, Cole and Mark can talk more about it than I can, philosophically about the planning process, but I mean, it is, any land development code is going to allow you to change zoning. And then you have the problem with somebody not liking what the change is, and people like planning commissioners and city commissioners that have to make tough decisions. And those start feeling, if you have enough of them, they start feeling like, gee, is there no structure to any of this? There actually is quite a bit of structure, and 9 out of 10 projects, the building permits are issued, and inspections releases the building permits without issue, and it's all enforceable, and very much structured organization. It's just the ones that get a lot of attention that start feeling, start making one feel uncomfortable if you're dealing with enough of those in a single year. And I think that becomes a challenge.
Thank you.
To add to that a little bit, I would say there's probably a little bit of a hint that the land development code needs to be changed a little bit. And I say that in the fact that many years ago there used to be a 13th Avenue Review Committee, and what they would do is they brought site plans to Planning Commission level, and what the Planning Commission found at the time was they were approving the same, buffers, the same landscaping at all these different, they were called special use permits back then. With that, they felt that, all right, we're repeating this and repeating this, let's update our code. And that really was the birth of our 1998 Land Development Code. And so when recently, I would say in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we're starting to see more PUD requests and more special limited commercial zonings with a bunch of conditional use permit restrictions on it based on mixed use that our code really isn't accommodating right now. But the approvals are common. Each approval is pretty much the same as the last one. And I think that's a good clue that there's some arranging that needs to be done within the Land Development Code. And we're anticipating that phase 1 is roughly going to be about a year process. And then what we get with the end of phase 1 will kind of dictate where we go in the future. Before I transition into the core neighborhood plan, is there any questions on Land Development Code stuff? So based on some of this discussion and based on some of the things that have been going on currently within the community, it's been pretty evident that we need some sort of core neighborhood plan. And many years ago, the analysis and the research of the Roosevelt neighborhood putting together a land use plan on top of an existing neighborhood had never been done within the city. And that's helped guide a lot of the decisions since then. And we've kind of come to the conclusion that it's about time that we start focusing on all the core neighborhood plans. When we start looking at our growth and our limited growth potential, and we start looking at the population expansion within the city of Fargo, I think it's evident that we need to be pretty serious about where all this growth is going to happen. And with that, it's going to have to identify areas that need to be preserved, areas that need to be redeveloped, infill areas, areas that maybe have zoning right now that probably should be modified for a different land use. And so the core neighborhood plan is at the top of our list too. It's not as developed right now as where we've been with the Land Development Code. The last 2 Friday meetings, we've kind of discussed this core neighborhood plan and where we should go and how we should go about conceptualizing this. We had a pretty fun activity the last 2 times ago. We got together and we were all kind of bashful of what's a core neighborhood plan. So we sort of just started writing out what a core neighborhood plan, and it was pretty neat to see from the staff's perspective a lot of commonalities of what we felt should be in a core neighborhood plan and what that document should accomplish. And it's going to be exciting to be able to share some of that information with you at the brown bag. So that being said, I think those are going to be 2 very large documents. They're going to take some time to work on. They're going to take a lot of attention to detail to be able to make sure that everyone is heard and they represent everything that we want to see accomplished to the best of our ability.
What do we classify as the core neighborhoods?
So actually, maybe just to correct Mark with just one detail is, we have been discussing this with Brown Bag and the Planning Commission in terms of the core neighborhood plan, probably since Jan was chair. We started introducing the topic. And so as staff, we've been, kind of circling this issue and I shouldn't say issue, but topic. And it was last year, Tyrone and Aaron did a lot of analysis. I think you saw some of those presentations with maps and kind of the research that Mark was talking about to try to get that base underlying kind of understanding. And so at that time, we determined 19th Avenue North to Interstate to the south, River to the east, and 25th Street to the west, but then kind of jogging to pick up the Madison neighborhood.
Kind of like we did when we restructured the
Exactly.
variants.
So yeah, this is for those that don't know, this is a spin-off of a few years ago when we did the Land Development Code. We had 2 task forces, a residential land development code task force and a commercial task force. The commercial task force never really took off. Political will changed in a different direction, but the Commissioner Gunkelman was representative. I can't remember, Shara, if you were on there or not, but the core neighborhood or the land development task force came up with some kind of minor recommendations, kind of short-term, long-term, midterm, and long-term. So this core neighborhood plan is a result of that long-term review. So similar issues, probably both groups will be kind of seeking your input for steering committees and involvement. You see, obviously, the core neighborhood plan integrating with the community development committee with some of the work that they do, and maybe a little history of neighborhood planning as a whole. I'd be remiss to say prior to the Roosevelt neighborhood plan, the last rendition of the Roosevelt neighborhood plan, all of our neighborhood planning activities came out of community development activities, community development block grant in particular. And so the Jefferson neighborhood and a lot of our core neighborhoods have a plan that was more kind of issue and strategy specific. So if there was, trying to think of, talking about beautification or other components that that neighborhood kind of helped drive, then it was, okay, these are the partners as part of that strategy, like the police department or the parks district or neighborhood or roles. And so we see that kind of getting updated and integrated with the core neighborhood plan along with a land use plan and understanding of preservation or redevelopment or whatever those context issues are related to that geographical area. And we know from 19th Avenue to Interstate and from River to 25th Street that there's going to be a lot of contextual differentiation of what's happening and what the community wants to see as part of that vision. So what might, so understanding at the granular level what that differentiation is going to be so we can have an agreed upon consensus-built vision is the ultimate goal.
I've got a question. Are the park district and the school district, are they involved at all in these plans?
Yeah, they will be. So this is, you are literally the first group we've started talking about this publicly. So we're excited today because this is kind of our first public announcement. We're ready to kind of kick this off. It's integrated in our work plan. We've got the funding, and so, that took 2 years just to get funding, and so we're really excited. We've got staff, so we're just super excited that we're at this level of planning activities. And so, yeah, absolutely, just like the same level of integration you saw in the downtown and focus plan in terms of, the consultants and the public outreach and really see that level of, community involvement.
Yeah, to add to that, the work we've been doing is kind of structuring staff on how we're able to put this in our work plan and then make this a successful project. So yeah, like what Nicole's saying, you're literally the first public announcement of us trying to go forward with this. And the process will involve many different stakeholders, and we have kind of put together a spreadsheet a little bit, and those people have already been identified as stakeholders.
So like the LDC, would this be one that you'd bring in consultants to work with? Gotcha.
So the brown bag, is that the one in February or the one in March? That'll deal with these two?
In February, what we'd like to do is take the work that staff has been doing in terms of staff will recognize, will be the first to admit that I'm pretty hard-nosed when it comes to identifying a timeline, what are the resources we need, who are the champions, that project charter, all of these mission components, at least as staff. So we'd like to introduce that to what staff has been thinking about. Again, just first blush draft to give you something to respond to and react to. So this would be kind of hot off the presses as we start to, we have a number of questions for you as it relates to, kind of helping you, or kind of asking you to help guide us as part of that very first step. So that'd be February's meeting. We're hoping, I think, I would have to reference a timeline, but I'm thinking we're hoping to issue an RFP by April, I think. So, and recognizing that it takes time to draft an RFP because we want that RFP to reflect the interests that you present. So we have some flexibility.
Yeah, I kind of have a rough timeline here if you want to get
Oh,
into it,
yeah.
but we can certainly wait for brown bag too.
We did not rehearse. Maybe speaking of brown bag real quick, just one quick addition. We'll be sending out a Survey Monkey. I've talked to Commissioner Fisher about this. I just haven't done it yet. But we understand that attendance is kind of a little light at brown bag, and we recognize that many people have different conflicts based on different times of year and weather and illness and all of those things. But we did want to just send out a Survey Monkey to kind of confirm, does this kind of timeline, does this day in the week, in the month work for you? Does the time good for you? Would you prefer a different time in the day? Those kinds of questions as we kind of just refresh, and especially as we're going into a new building, that's going to help us identify which space we can use and as well. So just wanted to let you know that'll be forthcoming in the next few days.
Any other questions? Thoughts?
Good news. This is good news that you're working on these two.
It's extremely exciting.
Yes.
Kind of wish we would have had a little more, public participation when they can hear all the things that you are planning and that you're thinking of constantly. Sorry, John, you already know this stuff, though. You're very familiar with us, but it is good to hear everything that you're always thinking about, even if we're not hearing about it. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other last thoughts? We're good? With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.